Hi folks, we're back. This is part 2 of our lecture on communication and the shaping of our identities. And we are on the part about talking about what are the characteristics of what we call a self-concept. Remember, the self-concept is basically how we describe ourselves, how we see ourselves. We're not talking necessarily about self-esteem. It is about how we feel about ourselves, but it's really about what do we think of ourselves, our self-concept. So the thing about the self-concept is we need to recognize that it's subjective. It's not objective. In fact, it's impossible for your self-concept, what you think of yourself, to be objective. You don't stand outside of yourself. You're living in yourself. You are yourself. So it's subjective. And with that, it's not accurate. Okay, it's impossibly objective, and it's not accurate because you really can't see you in the way that other people can see you. And that we say it's often distorted. What do we mean by that? So there's this idea of, it's kind of like a concept of foggy mirror, that oftentimes we actually will see ourselves more positively than others. Interesting, right? You think that maybe it would be the opposite. But we really will look and we will pay attention. And I'm sure it's about our ego and our need to even survive. I mean, if we looked at all of our faults all the time, we'd probably never get out of bed. So we do this. It's part of our survival mechanism, is we see ourselves actually more positively than other people do. And what are the reasons? Why do we have distorted self-concepts? And by the way, all of us do to some degree or another. Well, some of us focus on things that are in the past. In the past means it's obsolete. Obsolete means it doesn't even matter. Honestly, the truth is right now, the only thing that matters is the only thing you have control over. And oftentimes we let things of the past, whether it's things like failures or even successes, we let those things decide who we are. Okay, decide like how we think about ourselves rather than being in the present. That's what I mean by obsolete information. Distorted feedback. I talked about this earlier. Getting overly positive or overly critical messages. Overly positive too. If someone is telling you things that aren't true, they're not going to help you. If someone's criticizing you to an extreme degree, that's also not true and not going to help you. That's what helps distort our own self-concept. Believing in this idea that we can be perfect. I hear students say it all the time. I used to say it. You know, people who procrastinate, that's part of perfectionism, in case you didn't know that already. That's about wanting to do something perfectly or putting it off because you're so afraid you're not going to do it perfectly, so you'd rather not do it at all. Okay? It's a belief that perfect is possible. Perfect isn't possible. It's not. There is no such thing as perfect. And then our social expectations. And those are social expectations that are put on us, that we put on ourselves, where we're distorted about people that are either bragging all the time and talking about how great they are, or people that are constantly putting themselves down. That's a distorted sense of self. Usually, most of us are more in the middle. We got good things about us and bad things about us, and that makes up who we are. And the truth is, there isn't. When we do, we try to highlight how bad we are. We try to downplay our accomplishment or highlight how great we are. Any of those things that we're trying to fit in. And also what they mean about social expectations is, in our culture, it's actually gender specific. Men are more likely to be expected to not downplay their accomplishments, but women are. And women are called certain names. Then they're bragging. But men are expected to boast and say how great they're doing. Women are less or more like to say, if you say something like, you look really great today, that happens to me. I'll say, oh yeah. I won't say thank you. Thank you so much. I'll point out what's wrong with me. Okay? That's a distorted self-concept. Ask yourself if you do that. The next time you get a compliment, do you say thank you so much and just allow that to happen? Or do you say, yeah, like today I was wearing a hat in an earlier lecture and someone said something about the hat and I said, oh yeah, I didn't feel like washing my hair today. All right, I didn't need to say that. I just should have said, you're right, it's a beret day. I could have just left it at that. So we do it all the time. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's unconscious. Okay. And also we have this thing called cognitive conservatism, which is mentally we are resistant to change. That's kind of like all of us are looking for the status quo. I know that we have these political labels of conservative and liberal, but the truth is about human beings is we all like it when things don't change. We like things just the way it are. We like to be, we say we want change, but there's change that we make, and then there's change that's hoisted upon us. Those are two different kinds of change. So when you think about it, we really do like to know what's going to happen. We like certainty. We like a certain amount of certainty for our own well-being. It's actually part of our survival. When I talked about interpersonal communication earlier, in the earlier lectures, it's part of our survival to know that someone's going to be there for us, to know that someone's going to love us. So certainty and wanting to have that stability and resistance to change is part of our survival. Okay, moving on. Culture, gender, and identity. We're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but a little bit of time. So our culture, right? That's our ethnicity, our nationality, it's our racial background. It's also has to do with our religion, right? Oftentimes culture and religion are linked. That informs what kinds of customs we practice, what kinds of traditions we practice, what kinds of values we have, what are our beliefs. All of those things inform that. Our sex and gender. This is sex and gender. Gender is a social construction. Gender means the expression of masculinity or femininity, generally speaking. That's why the word transgender means it's trans, it's past all that, right? Transgender means it's a separate gender of like, it is the expression of whatever that person says they are, okay? They're not transforming is the wrong word, but transcending that. When we think of transgender, of that identity, someone who's totally changed their sexual, biological identity to a different identity. So gender is socially constructed. We decide what's masculine and what's feminine. I just want you to really think about that. We as a culture, we as a society, we as a community, we as a family decide that. We decide what girls are allowed to play with, what toys are allowed to, what they're allowed to wear, what boys are supposed to wear, what toys boys are supposed to play with. All around these two little things, right? What equipment, the sexual equipment a boy has and the sexual equipment a girl has. We're talking testes and ovary decide all these things throughout our life. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. Okay. So again, sex is determined by your biological characteristics and traits. It's about what equipment you have. There's a story, and I'm going to tell this story. I know this is going to be long lectures, but there's a story of someone who was born hermaphrodite. But so it's like there is an asexual, or there's an identity that's not, you're not necessarily asexual. It's called something right now at the top of my head. I can't think of what it is. But they were born a hermaphrodite. So the child, hermaphrodite means they both have testes as well as ovaries, or they have female equipment and male equipment. They could have external male equipment and internal female equipment, one or the other. This is from we're talking like the 50s or 60s or something, a long time ago. The doctor decided that this child who was born with ovaries but had male equipment, it's one or the other. I can't remember. It could have been vice versa. The doctor decided what this child should be. As the child grew older, the child felt like it was the opposite of how it was being socially being raised. And I think it was they were raised a girl, but they always felt like a boy. So they must have lacked the penis, and the doctor had to manage, or had a small penis and had to make it into the female clitoris and all that, and then had inside had testes. Okay. But because of the way the child was made, they decided that it would be raised as a girl. But later on in that child's life, they actually felt like they were a boy. And no one had told this child what had happened to them. No one had said, this is what was decided for you when you were a baby. I think it's really interesting. Interesting little story. Okay. This is a great little video. Real women have curves. Let me go back to that. A great little video because it shows how much gender and culture, the intersection of them, and how much they affect how we see ourselves and what other people tell us. If you haven't seen this movie, Real Women Have Curves, it's a great movie. It's fantastic, and this little clip is really positive. Okay, let's look at self-fulfilling prophecy. So self-fulfilling prophecy and communication. What is a self-fulfilling prophecy? Most of you know what this is, right? It's this belief that a person's expectations of an event and then their behavior, subsequent means their behavior afterward, make the event more likely to occur. Okay? So it's a belief about yourself or a belief about your expectation about an event, and then your behavior make the event likely to occur. But it's also about what you think about yourself. There are 4 stages. The first stage is having that expectation of yourself or others. The other one is behaving in accordance to that expectation. So if you think you're going to fail, right, this can apply to how you all like mentally prepare if you're a athlete, right? You mentally prepare. And if there's any part of you that believes that you're not good enough or you're going to fail, how often does that really happen then? That's what it means about self-fulfilling prophecy. It's the idea that what you believe in your head about yourself will actually come to be, because your behavior your belief will then guide your behavior to make it so. And then what happens is you say, well, I guess it's true. I guess I suck at basketball because I didn't make one hoop. I didn't make one basket. And I knew it because that's exactly what I thought going in the game. That's what self-fulfilling prophecy and communication. Imagine if you were to think about that and how that then affects your communication with other people, right? Think about also, has that happened to you as a kid, as a young person, as an older person? Has that happened to you? Have you done that to anyone else? Have you seen someone said something to someone and then seen them end up doing exactly what you said they were going to do because they believed you? Something to think about. Okay, I have to stop here again, and we're going to go on to the next part. I'll see you in a minute.